Paul. And thank you to the Hello Tomorrow team as well for having Aerofarms here to be able to share our story of what we're doing to transform agriculture. And so we're going to talk, as Paul mentioned, about indoor vertical farming, and we'll get a chance to share with you what does that mean, how we're approaching it. But first, we really want to paint a picture in terms of what keeps us up at night, the idea of what's ahead of us, the future. And fundamentally, we're thinking about population growth. We're thinking about the challenges we face. By 2050, 9.7 billion people will be on the planet. And these are the challenges we think about today in terms of how we face that. How do we think about growing the food? How do we think about feeding? And one of the things we're talking about is, again, also rapid urbanization. So by 2050 as well, over 75% of the people are going to be living in cities. So these are the challenges that keep us up at night and thinking about how do we meet them, and how do we uniquely meet them. There are estimates that in order to meet those needs, we're going to need to increase our food production by 50%. And what does that represent? That represents all of South America, the idea of where we're going to find extra space to grow for more people. And these are the challenges because just over the last 30 years, we've lost a third of our arable land. So this is going to be one of the biggest aspects when we think about facing us today, the traditional field farming. How do we meet these challenges of growing population and growing urbanization? We also think about the concept of water, access to water. Today, worldwide, 70% of fresh water goes to agriculture, and 70% of contamination is coming from agriculture. The challenges we face are becoming more and more acute. The idea that food grows where water flows, the idea that we have embedded people, communities, nations thinking about water access, water security. And this is going to be one of our most pressing things as we think about moving forward and thinking about the challenges. But the reality is, the field farmers have not kept up with technology. You can still hear traditional sprinklers being used. This is very inefficient. You lose a lot to evaporation. You think about the aspect of just being able to have this water waste. But again, a lot of the crops that we grow today can't benefit from things like drip irrigation. So these are the challenges that we have today in terms of where innovation is happening and what's needed. We think about the aspect of runoff. So all that watering, what happens when you have this runoff? We talk about the contamination that's leading to these dead zones. In the United States, the dead zone coming out of the Mississippi is bigger than the state of Connecticut when you look at what's happening in the Gulf Sea. So these are big challenges when we think about traditional field farming, so dependent on our heavy use of fertilizer, heavy use of pesticides. And this is one of the things that there are more and more pressures. We think about climate change. Warmer weather means more pests. So the idea that, again, you have a lot of competing factors here that are really putting the spotlight on what are we going to be able to do in the field. And the reality is, and it's well known in terms of the food safety and food security and actually our worker welfare. So the idea of using the pesticides, what are the ways that we can help work through this? So this is just a shot out in the field in terms of saying, danger, do not enter. But yet this is how our food is being grown. These are some of the challenges that we're facing. We also think about things around that food safety and some of the issues that we see that unfortunately almost every day there's a recall that's happening. And the aspect is, one of the things is the idea of how to minimize that. So here's a sign right from a farm, absolutely no animals allowed due to food safety issues. But how do you control that in the field? So here's a shot again of another field, and you see the birds, you see the different migration. And that's also another factor now, what's happening with the warmer weather. You're seeing different migration patterns of the birds. And so the field farmer is having to adapt and having to make changes, and it's really tough to compete and keep up. One of the ways that the industry has responded, and this is really kind of the dirty part of the industry, is around processing. So the idea that, again, it's grown, it's harvested, but then it's immediately brought into these large industrial scale facilities to wash the product down. And have you ever thought about when it says it's triple washed, what are they washing away? They're washing away the soil, they're washing away the pesticides, and then they're trying to wash away the contamination. So what can become a micro contamination can often become a macro contamination. And this is a function of the industry. And all this water typically becomes gray water. It's hard to remediate, so it's very energy intensive, very intensive in terms of the water use. Despite all those efforts, the food safety and the recalls are becoming more and more headline news all the time. And so we think it's one of the critical things in terms of like how do we ensure a safe food supply? What are the new ways around this? The other aspect is around food waste. So there's been a lot of discussion around how typically around 40% of food is thrown out. If you take this back through the value chain, all the way back to the farm, through a very complex supply chain from the retailer to the distributor to the farm, it's actually over 76% of food is wasted for leafy greens alone. And this is an amazing statistic in terms of how long does it take for that head of lettuce to break down? 25 years. So the idea that, again, we need a new way, a new paradigm. How do we be more efficient? How do we address these macro issues is more acute than ever before. And so fundamentally, we're thinking about how do we address this? How do we be one of the solutions at the table? Aerofarms is very much focused in terms of all of the different stakeholders, from the environment to the society, to our community, to our employees, and then ultimately to our investors as well. And when we talk about vertical farming, this is showing you a rendering of what we're talking about. So for us, how we define vertical farming is how many beds of growing can we get into a space. We're growing in warehouses without sun or soil. We're actually taking the volatility of Mother Nature out of the equation. We actually are delivering, plants don't need sunlight, they need spectrum of light, and we can be very targeted using LEDs. We also are using something called aeroponics. That's the arrow in Aerofarms. And so we can be very targeted with how we deliver the nutrients and water and misting the roots as opposed to bathing the roots. And the whole concept here is, again, how do you enable production at scale to be able to compete? How do you bring the farm to the consumer? How do you bring the farm to the city? And this is one of the ways we think we're part of that solution. So we can grow in converted warehouse spaces and really drive economic development of abandoned places. Things that make Aerofarms unique as well are growing medium. We grow on cloth, so there's no soil. This growing medium is actually reusable. So after a harvest, we simply scrape off the roots and stems. We wash it, so it's a kill step as well, so very sanitary. And then we reuse it. And we've been using the same cloth for years. And our cloths are made out of BPA-free water bottles that were taken out of the waste stream. So the idea that we can actually take something from the waste stream and turn it into something green and productive is part of what we call the circular economy. And that's something we're really proud to be focused on as a company. We're part of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation Circular Economy 100. We talk about what is a healthy root system. So this is showing you in terms of you can actually see the droplets on the roots. So we can be very targeted. We actually know right down to the micron size. So this is a new way of farming where science, engineering, biology, it's all coming together in terms of really thinking about a new food system. And the idea that we can be so efficient, this is a way of growing 95% less water, and there's no pesticides, so it's a great product. The idea that we can create the right lighting recipe, the right lighting algorithm, is one of the things that we can have more effective photosynthesis indoors all year round. And so we're putting all these elements together to be able to optimize the plants, for taste, texture, color, nutrition, and yield. So it's about having the right business model. As a company, we can grow and have grown a wide range of different crops, from the vine crops to tubers to root vegetables. Today, we focus specifically on short stem leafy greens and herbs to be able to optimize that productivity per square foot. It's really now productivity per cubic foot. But the idea with baby leafy greens that might take 30 to 45 days to grow out in the field, we can grow in 12 to 16 days because we're giving them the perfect environment. And what does that mean? That means up to 30 harvests a year versus the field where you may have up to 3 harvests. So this is fundamentally game-changing in terms of, again, that kind of productivity. It's a way of growing that's 390 times more productive per square foot than the field farm, and again, using far fewer inputs and resources. Things that we're really celebrating, though, around flavor, things that have gone to the wayside. Today, the field farmer is very much focused on the genetics of the seed. Is it mildew resistant? Is it drought resistant? Can the product hold up to a very complex supply chain and washing? We're bringing back a rich biodiversity. We've grown over 250 different types of leafy greens and herbs, and it's an opportunity to really bring some new excitement into the category. We've been leading the way. As a company, we've been around since 2004. We'll be the first ones to tell you that this is not easy to do. It really takes expertise across a number of different areas. My background is in marketing. I've headed the marketing for supermarket chains and specialty food retailers. Our chief science officer is formerly a professor at Cornell University, which is one of the top agriculture schools in the world. His role there was deploying technology to help farmers. And then our CEO is a clean tech champion, really thinking about water in his work with the World Economic Forum and how we can minimize any kind of waste. He also co-chairs the Circular Economy Task Force there. We share this because, again, there's been a number of milestones for the company, and we talk about how do we address the needs today, how do we address the needs tomorrow. It's taken a lot of lessons, and what we think we have is a very unique path. So as a company, we've brought in the expertise in-house. So all the systems that you see, we've designed. We have the horticulture specialists, we have the crop physiologists, the plant pathologists, the microbiologists. On the engineering, we have the mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, PLC engineers, industrial engineers. And it's this idea that how we can bring this together is really important. This idea that we can manage the environment. The mechanical, these are our growing systems, our growing towers. They're really like living computers. There's sensors, there's monitors everywhere. There's literally hundreds of thousands of data points with every one of our harvests. And all of that gets fueled into understanding at the heart, how do we deliver a consistent product all year round? And it's this symbiotic relationship between these four different elements, the environment, mechanical operations, and biology, that allows us, again, to have the right kind of efficiency, the right kind of productivity, and the right kind of product optimization. And at the heart, it really helps us think about how food safety is integrated into this entire process from end to end. We're doing things, we just announced a major partnership with Dell Technologies about the Internet of Things, how we integrate sensors and how we can manage information at the farm, how we can manage information in the cloud. We just built out our 9th farm. This is in Newark, New Jersey. This is where we also have our global headquarters. It's the world's largest indoor vertical farm based on productivity output. It's a 70,000 square foot facility. It's a repurposed steel mill, though. It was an abandoned steel mill, so the idea that all of a sudden in downtown Newark, in an industrial area, we can all of a sudden have a farm, we can also create jobs, we can all of a sudden have an impact. This idea that it's redefining agriculture. So we're doing things like machine vision, machine learning, AI. We're showing you here some mapping that we do of our different products, our different greens. This is actually a ruby streak mustard green. And we're able to look at this and see leading indicators around the health, the quality, and be able to understand, again, how to optimize that. And what at the heart of it, though, is how do we deliver a beautiful product? So how does that mustard green show up in the finished goods that the consumer's enjoying and be able to deliver that consistently all year round? This is a product that's been getting great reviews not only on taste, but also on nutrition. We've done third-party testing and a much higher nutrition value that you would have in the field, and we actually can do this, again, all year round. The idea that we're working with top chefs, so it's not just us saying it's good. So here's an example, one of the top chefs, Marcus Samuelson, integrating in that ruby streak mustard green I just talked about into one of his dishes. We're working with another top chef, David Chang. Here our baby kale is being featured. David Chang was so excited by what we're doing that he actually joined us in our last round of investment, and he's actually on our board of advisors, helping us with our thinking about our culinary development. And that's what's really exciting about what we can do with this level of control and precision, is focus on that flavor, focus on those varieties that have been hard to come by, and again, bring back some excitement. The idea that we're transforming communities, this is an awesome opportunity to think about the right kind of public-private partnerships, working with the communities in terms of creating jobs, economic development, the idea that we can actually repurpose abandoned spaces. So it's been really exciting to be part of that, not only in Newark, but in other cities and communities. This is an example of one of the things we're doing around food waste as well. So this is actually what you'd call a second harvest of our baby kale. This is actually being served at the New York Times in their corporate dining room. And they're so excited by the story and about how we can recover this product. Normally this would be left in the field. You think about the inefficiency, of our system. And so this is actually a second harvest celebrating. You can see there's a lot more stem in the product, but a lot more flavor and a lot more crunch and a lot more texture. So the opportunities that we can have on a number of different fronts in terms of a better product, more nutritious, and then thinking about the food waste has been really exciting for us. So this is ultimately what we're talking about in terms of commercial production, the idea that we can feed the masses. This is an example of one of our grow rooms. So the scale of this, it's 36 feet high, so imagine growing with these towers all the way up to the ceiling here. The idea that we have controlled environment. Everything you see here has been calibrated for a specific customer. This is really just-in-time growing. This is changing the equation in terms of, again, that efficiency. It's not plan it and hope we can sell it. It's actually planning it because it's already been committed to. And so this is one of the other ways that we're driving efficiency in the marketplace. and working closely with our selling partners. So we sell to a wide range of different customers. We sell to the major supermarkets. We sell to major food service companies. We sell to major institutions. The idea is, again, how do we feed the masses? How do we democratize access to good food? And the idea is that we actually even have our own farm stand. We open up our doors and address right in Newark what's called a food desert. Access to fresh food is very limited. So a number of different ways that we're able to touch and be part of the community. Our focus as a company is about how we scale and how we build these around the world. Right now, we've got fantastic partners in different regions. We've thought very strategically around these partners and thinking about impact we can have. The red dot on the map represents cities with over 1 million population. So we think about that urban density. We think about that overall population growth as we get to 9.7 billion. What are some of the solutions? What are some of the options that we can provide? We recently did a piece with Chef Mario Batali, and again, it was a showcase of another aspect of what we're doing in the community. So we actually have a working farm and an inner-city school in Newark as well. We've been there for over 7 years. We've had the chance to have an impact and see the impact on multiple generations, multiple students and their families. And it's a great example. So this working farm, you can see much smaller scale, 2 levels are growing, but it's right in their dining hall. The dining hall becomes another classroom for the students. They have an incredible connection with their food. And it's the shortest farm-to-table experience around for these students. And they eat it because they grew it. And so it's one of the best things in terms of thinking about how do you change behavior? How do you think about making an impact in the community? You start at an early age from an education standpoint, and you provide the tools not only for education around how to make healthier choices, but providing opportunities in terms of future career development as well. So if you get a chance, great piece to take a look at the Chew, ABC, kind of Google it and take a look. But we also have a video for you today that we're going to share with you a little bit more about the scale and what we're doing. It's an opportunity to be able to show the size and scale. When we talk about commercial farming, what does it take? You know, this is just an example of one of the things we're doing and how we can build these around the world. And one of the things that we're talking about, we're open to partnering further, how we can accelerate that growth and development. We currently have projects in development on 4 different continents, so please come talk to me and look forward to catching up with you. Thank you.